We're expecting Leo.
We are. He should be here momentarily. So we'll wait 2 minutes just to get people settled in. Council meeting to order. Roll call shows that Councilors Marks, Demerit, Powers, Laraway, Kenny, myself, Councilor Wingard are present in person. Councilor Berthasol is joining us online. Before we begin with our planned agenda, we have a brief report from Chief Lowe regarding the recent storm.
Yeah, thank you. So this storm is significantly different than some of the other storms that we've had. You know, I've talked about climatic change and some of the challenges that we've been facing in previous meetings, and this is a really good example of how violent it can get in Maine now as compared to previous years. Unlike the other years, like the winter storms that we have when we bring everybody together, where we have heavy snow and we have power lines come down from trees, this time we've actually we've lost a lot of the transmission infrastructure in town. And in other words, we've had a lot of utility poles come down. A lot of those poles have transformers, and it's not just local to Orono. This is truly it's a statewide issue at this point. And our region was definitely impacted significantly. Versant spent a fair amount of the day today basically trying to reopen roadways. So if there are trees that are down that are entangled with power lines or any type of service cable, neither Public Works or fire will touch them. We put cones out or whatever we have for barriers just to notify the public, and then we move on to something else. That requires the utility companies to come out and deal with that. That is the only thing the utility companies have done in Orono today that I'm aware of is clear roads so that people can get through. And not all roads in Orono are clear, just the main roads such as Forest Avenue. There was a significant blockage out of Forest Avenue. That's one area that they were able to clear up, so at least traffic can get through. We have 5 or 6 side streets that are still blocked. They are not priority roads right now. They don't have any critical infrastructure. They don't have any readily identified high-risk occupants in that area. So they go further down the list of when they can get cleared up and cleared out. Versant obviously is not giving any estimates as to when they're going to be able to get power back. Again, like I said, it's utility poles that are causing a lot of the problem in addition to down power lines. You know, power lines coming down, it's a matter of putting them back up on the pole or restretching some new line. With the actual poles that are broken and the number that they're broken, they're going to have to come out. They're going to have to bring multiple poles, set the poles, and then they're going to have to bring transformers with them. And on some of the streets, we have 4 or 5 poles down, each pole having a transformer on it. So that's a significant amount of work that's going to have to be taken care of, or a significant amount of work that's going to have to be planned for and done, I should say. Priorities for Versant are critical infrastructure within a community. So like if wastewater station, for whatever reason, didn't have a generator backup, they would want to get power to them. Nursing homes, hospitals, believe it or not, grocery stores are considered critical infrastructure because people need food. So those types of places are going to get priority as far as getting power back to them. I don't realistically expect to see power back in some places in Orono till Friday or perhaps later. That's just the nature of the beast that we're dealing with right now, and the complexity and the amount of damage that has occurred. We are starting, I shouldn't say we're starting, we're trying to be proactive with some of this. We know that people are going to have issues with heating. People are going to want to charge devices and things like that. Starting tomorrow, we'll be opening warming centers here at the town office and the council chambers and at the library. They'll be open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. so people can come in and charge devices, warm up, those types of things. We do have a process in place to both receive communication and push out communication. So if somebody has an issue, they can call the town office, they can call fire, they can call whoever they need to call, and all that information will be funneled through my office, where I will be working with the County Emergency Management Agency and other people to try to meet needs, or at least get information back to people so they know what's going on. We're also going to use social media as much as we can to push out information. Some of that will be infographics about generator safety and home fire safety and whatnot, especially using candles and those types of things. As we get updates from the county, we'll be pushing out information that way as well. I've got Pete on board to be able to support us across the multiple town Facebook pages, the website, and those types of things. We have checked in with some of the larger facilities here in town, Dirigo Pines, Orono Commons. We've spoken with both Old Town and Orono Housing, who have housing in the community, in the town, that have a large communal footprint. They're saying that they're in touch with their residents. A lot of residents have power because they happen to be on that side of the service. Those that don't, the property management companies are in contact with them frequently to see where they are. The last thing I'll share with you is that as we get information in about people that are struggling, especially seniors or people who have special needs, or we get requests for welfare checks, we're going to actually start putting them on a list, and we'll start until we start to get a good amount of power back. We'll begin doing checks on them at least daily, knock-in checks. And for those that are potentially more frail than others, that'll likely be a twice-a-day thing, just to check in to make sure that they're okay and they aren't having issues. But that's where we are right now. That's all I can tell you. Versant isn't giving out any other information because honestly, I don't think they have a full global picture yet of exactly what they're dealing with. And it's going to take some time for them to figure out where things need to be and how quickly they can get there and that type of stuff. Oh, the last thing I did do is I recommended to the school, I sent an email to Mary Higgins today, recommend the school department not bother to open until after the break is over. I don't expect power, we might get lucky, but I don't expect power back in part of town until, again, probably the weekend. It would be best from an emergency perspective if they were to harden the school for cold exposure and just leave students at home. Give them a couple extra days is the recommendation. So that's where we stand with that.
Is there a generator backup at the school? I thought that we invested in that a while ago, but maybe I'm off.
The answer,
If
there are
you aware?
Not that I'm aware of.
some generators, but they're mostly emergency lights and low grade stuff. They're not going to be able to run kitchens and full classes on the generators that they have.
And they're not running the furnace either.
They probably are keeping the furnace going. I don't.
Well, I'm wondering if there's any warming possibility there.
So I don't know that we're there yet. We're not expecting a flood, but that's certainly in mind. The other thing is if we have to shelter, that's a whole
Flood of
different.
people or flood?
A flood, we're not expecting a flood of people. You know that we'll get some people. Yeah. We know that we'll get some people here, and the library tends to see a fair amount of people in general. If we start to get overwhelmed, again, which I don't expect, then we would certainly look that direction, or we'd look at utilizing the field house up at the university, which is actually our sheltering location. If we have to shelter, overnight shelter for people, That's a whole different scenario where we need to contact Red Cross and bring in the county emergency management agency and the university. And it's not as simple as saying, come on in and warm up. There's a more in-depth process with planning and bringing in resources and those types of things. So it's on the radar, but it's not anything we're looking at just yet.
Thank you so much for the update. It's really nice to know that you all are working on this and being so detail oriented.
Thank you, yeah, all those people out there, community, thanks.
Do you think person has the equipment, like the transformers or any word of whether they'll have a shortage of those kinds of key?
So I don't really know, but I do know that we have a really robust mutual aid system in the state for all of those utilities, whether it's wastewater or power or whatever. And whatever they need, they will be able to bring in through interstate agreements. As long as the equipment's compatible, they'll be able to bring it in and then
Yeah.
we'll backfill, wherever we need to.
And in terms of like the people doing the visits and stuff for the town, it's just members of the fire department or the police department or?
So I'm looking at members of the fire department, police department, and probably some people from Public Works, if we need to pull them.
Okay.
We should, if we do it right, once we identify how many people we have, my thought is it might be a couple hours in the morning and then maybe a little less time in the afternoon. So split it among the three departments. I think it's manageable.
Okay, and you have the resources you need to pay people for that stuff?
Yeah.
I was also just wondering, I've heard, from some folks in my neighborhood about people are checking on each other and making sure that, people don't have needs in your neighborhood. I'm assuming that's something you would encourage people to keep checking on neighbors
Yeah.
and making sure everyone's doing okay during this time.
100%. That's the best way for people to identify problems and to get support and stuff like that, is if neighbors are checking on neighbors. I mean, we are resource limited, obviously. And that type of interaction is just, well, that's a tenet of emergency management anyway. So yeah, we definitely support that. And if, like I said, if things pop up, call the fire station or the town office here and we'll work on mitigating whatever. Oh, one last thing I need to point out. We put out cones and barriers around traffic hazards, whether it's power lines down or whatever. Those are simply warnings. We are not able to police people if they decide to drive over power lines or through anything that might be on the roadway or whatever. All we're doing is warning the public that there's a problem there, and we recommend that they don't do that. Just because power lines are down does not mean that they are not energized. Councilor Demerit was just talking about a bunch of generators in his neighborhood. If they aren't set up correctly or certain breakers aren't thrown, then those generators will backfeed through those large power lines on the ground. And they can cause you a lot of problems, up into including severe injury or worse. So it's travel at your own risk, behavior at your own risk. We're warning you, and we hope we don't have to come out and pick you up because something went awry. So.
Thank you very much. All right, so on to new business. Before we begin our new business, we need a very brief agenda adjustment. We need to change order 23-249. The language currently reads, order offering a letter of apology to the Penobscot Nation regarding the town's seal, and that should be amended to say regarding the town's gateway signing. We would also like to add a council chair report after order 23-250. So I take a motion to make those two adjustments.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
And
Oh, we need a roll.
I think we need a roll call vote because I'm online, but I too am in favor.
Okay, thank you. So Amanda, could you just go individual by individual and?
Councilor Berthasell,
In favor.
Councilor Demerit,
In favor.
Councilor
Kenny,
Kenny,
in favor.
Council Chair Wingard,
Fair.
Councilor Marks. In favor. Councilor Powers
Favor.
and Councilor Laraway.
Favor.
Thank you.
Wow.
Everyone's first try. We've been watching a lot of minutes.
Yeah.
Passes unanimously.
So I can't joke with you that I always get to go first. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we have one item of business and this is how I hope we'll be able to proceed. I have asked Sarah to give us a timeline and she has produced one in print version. Maybe she can summarize that. Just to bring us up to speed. how we got to this point. And then I'd like to change the order of our operation a little bit and invite any public comment that people would like to share prior to council deliberation on this. Then council will deliberate about the various documents that we have in front of us. And if there is consensus at that point, we'll take a vote. So it differs from our normal operating procedure a little bit, but hopefully that makes our discussion a little bit more logical. So if we're in agreement, is that okay? Is that okay? All right, good. All right, so maybe Sarah, you could lead us through the steps that brought us to this point.
Thanks. I'll do my best. There are notes there too, and I think eventually they'll probably go more digitally. There's already a document attached that talks about prior and up into 2022. So what I was asked to do is sort of give details of from September 2022 on to how we got here tonight. The gateway signage was replaced in September of 2022. Images of Chief Joseph Orono on the new signs became a kind of a hologram watermark background image. Difficult, at least for a lot of folks, if not impossible, to see on some of the signs. I wanted to say that in the next part where I've sort of summarized September to July, we began to get some emails from Penobscot Nation members expressing the hurt that they felt about the signage change. We got reports back that the Penobscot Nation Facebook page had similar concerns, and then a lot of individual conversations between community members and both Penobscot and non-Penobscot and counselors. I also wanted to highlight here, though, that I meant to say that during this same time, and Jeff can speak a little more to this than I can, the town already began to make efforts to improve the situation. There was a sign destroyed on Stillwater. And so I believe council and staff worked together to brighten that image. Mitch could probably talk more about it too. And it is definitively more visible on the Stillwater sign. If you're driving from the mall back to Orono, you can see that background image there, whereas most people can't see it on the other signs. So those efforts began right away. I was elected to council in March campaigning. Lots of people were talking to me about this issue and their concerns about it. So I was something on my agenda to want to ask about, but budget season is budget season, and I didn't get to it until July. I reached out to the town manager, Sophie Wilson. She and I met in August. Sophie really emphasized her top priority for staff being building, maintaining, and creating an excellent relationship with the Penobscot Nation. And that staff were open to any next steps regarding signage. She specified those to say a new design, going back to the old design, brightening all of the images, the way the Stillwater sign was done. What she expressed to me was staff was open to all of those, and that they really wanted to build further collaborations with the nation to make even more things about maybe a page on the website and historical signage and lots of other really interesting ideas that staff was hoping to pursue. She encouraged the creation of a new signage committee and/or counselors reaching out to Penobscot individuals for advice about how to move forward. So after that meeting, I met with Council Chair Wingard, and we decided to move forward by talking to the folks who had previously been consulted by council, who were members of the Penobscot Nation, and by watching past meetings. I volunteered to do the watch past meetings. So I grabbed the timeline document that folks already have based on that. And really what I want to say about past meetings is that what was obvious to me from start to finish is how deeply everyone on council cared about this issue and really wanted to maintain great relationships and not to cause any harm ever. It was spoken about repeatedly. And everyone, I thought, was just heartfelt and really cared about their neighbors and within town and the Penobscot Nation. That timeline document I created went to the town council, to Sophie Wilson, to the DIB committee, and to James Eric Francis and Darren Renko in early September. And meanwhile, Jeff and I were working on reaching out to all the 4 Penobscot consultants. That took a little time, schedule-wise a bit for reaching folks, and also because we weren't fully sure which 4 people we had to reach when we started. That became clear as we went on. One of those consultants made it clear that they felt very strongly that it wasn't possible to build a new committee to work on signage until some kind of official apology was made to Penobscot Nation Council. So I circled back to other consultants who confirmed they thought that was a good place to start. And based on that advice, Jeff and I and Margot Lukens, who's here in the community, helped to draft the first letter that we had, the longer version. In that process, Dan suggested the possibility of a shorter letter with like a briefing document attached. So both of those at one point got sent to the DIB committee. They recommended we move forward with the longer version. That longer version went to the 4 Penobscot consultants for their feedback. So that was Darren Renko, John Bear Mitchell, James Eric Francis, and John Banks. All their suggestions were made to that letter, and then it went back to council. And somewhere in there, council also voted in September for the $50,000, which is on here on September 11th as a fund that was available for any of this work if we decide to move forward on a project on signage or anything else that would really move this issue forward. And the DIB committee really took up looking at, I would say what became clear to me was that we know that everybody was trying so hard and really, really cared, and we still had some things that caused harm. So it seemed to me that the focus we needed to be was on our process as a council, that's sort of our job in our role, to look at our process and how we fix that going forward. So we've got better structures and better process. The DIB committee really took that up and watched all the meetings and had 3 different of their meetings discussing it and came to us with a formal set of recommendations just last Friday. And then at our last conversation as a full council on December 4th, we looked at the long letter and Leo Kenny suggested that he would like to present us with a shorter version, which he has. And we've all seen that, and that's also attached here. And that is what I have on history. Have I skipped something?
No, I think that's good. I think we should mention that the individuals that we're working with as our consultants, we're calling them consultants. They are really individuals who have given their time to the town, not just on this project, but in many other projects. They do not represent a formal body. They're not representatives of the Penobscot Nation government. They're just individuals who have ties to our community and also have ties to the Penobscot Nation who have been willing to share their personal stories and their expertise with us. So I don't want to professionalize that relationship too much. They're just community members who've sort of in this process.
And I just had a text that one of
Yeah.
them is online.
Oh, fantastic. Good. So if we have anything that should be added, we can promote that person to a participant and we can hear from that individual. So that said, with a little bit of background now in the open and both versions of a potential apology letter and other documentation in our background material, I first and foremost like to invite the public to weigh in on the process itself, any issues going forward, or any language or preferences on a letter or no letter.
Jeff, we do have a hand raised online.
Okay, could we hear from that individual, please? Go ahead, Darren.
Hey, hello, everyone. Thanks for having this meeting in the first place and revisiting this issue. I really appreciate it. And Sarah gave, I think, a really good timeline about where we're at. And the 4 of us, again, as it was just mentioned, we're all just concerned that we want to see projects like this happen in the town of Orono. And I think I'm happy to speak just for myself, but I was one of the key coordinators for the signage project that happened at the University of Maine campus. So I can also share lessons learned from that. I'm not big on really big on public statements of apology. I think, something like that is needed probably in this case, partly because the interesting part of the process, the timeline that I participated in was, this sort of work over 2020 and into the summer of 2020. James and I kind of doing history and sort of sharing options for a greater integration of signage and sort of Penobscot perspectives on that, as well as language and place. And then I did hear, little resistance at the time that there was oh, we already signed a contract with someone and they were, doing such and such for the signage to rethink it. And it didn't strike me as anything at the time, but, you know, perhaps when towns hire outside contractors to do, tourist type things, maybe that's like, you can't get out of that. And it's like going forward. And that was my understanding, is that we had this meeting, it seemed to go pretty well. And it was sort of like a real general kind of discussion of like, these are the kinds of things we could imagine going forward. And then within a year and a half or two, it had gone in the exact opposite direction. That's what it felt like to me, in terms of centering Penobscot people, place, that it was like, the signage had nothing to do with the specific places or the specific histories of the town of Orono. And that's where it makes me wonder, like, I think having a statement of like, we're starting a new process now to like actually work together, or I thought we were working together before, and I wouldn't have spent time and energy coming to the council in August of 2020 if I didn't think like, oh, well, they're serious about this and we're going to work together. So I guess that's it. In such letters, I would prefer specific action steps, specific goals that are kind of coordinated or committed to. And that can be a two-way street as well. But I think in terms of, what am I looking for? I just want good actions. I just want, this greater integration to happen. And I think building up a little bit of trust to grease that going forward, given the last couple of years of it, I think is important. So, I mean, I'm ready to get to work and think about how to make Orono this like center for Penobscot language signage, and the fact that we already have it on campus and have developed that angle for the university, I think makes it easier, and it opens up even more options I think are really exciting for the town, for an understanding of our history and working together between the town and the Penobscot Nation. So I'll stop there. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thank you very much. Go ahead, Dave.
I do. Thanks, Darren. This is Leo. And I was curious if you know if the nation was ever officially reached out to during this process.
So it was in the form of James Francis is the director of the Cultural and Historic Preservation Department. So through his department, that was the official connection with the actual government side, because they would delegate that kind of work to him. And he and I had I'm not going to speak for him. I have spoken to him, but he and I both had this very similar experience. Like, after a while, it's like, hey, whatever happened to that? And then you see these new signs come out and we're like, I guess they didn't like any of our ideas. It was kind of like that. None of us is like on bated breath, like gonna be like, oh no, this is happening. But yeah, I think I would consider that an official, between the manager and James, I would understand those as kind of official communiques, but nothing at the level of, to the chief, as far as I know, or council, but in terms of the department, yeah.
Thanks.
Well, we have Darren with us. Are there any other questions? All right. Well, I hope you might hang in on our meeting, Darren, in case we have questions. I invite any.
Just one last thing I can share with you all, just if you haven't seen it, is we did a signage plan for campus that was assembled, and sort of we talked through the sort of like the why, where, and how, it came out in 2018, and I'm happy to share that with council too, and I can send it to Sarah or whoever.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. If you could share it with Sarah or me, that would be great.
Yeah, it's because it's more of it's a nice document, because it's like almost like itself a planning document. I mean, we had basically the first 12 or 13 signs in it, but it kind of captured what went into it and why it's important, and what does it do for a place, and changing perspectives and things like that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. Do we have anybody else online? Any other hands raised?
None at this time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody in council chambers that would like to speak to this issue?
I have a text from
Yes.
Tim Waring, who was sick tonight and couldn't come, and he wanted me to read this text.
Yes, please.
So this is Tim Waring. He lives on Riverhaven. I feel strongly that our town should be intentional about the symbols we use to identify ourselves collectively. I feel that they should embody our values. I feel that they should also be respectful of local Native communities, but more than that, they should celebrate. But more than that, they should celebrate our connection to the Penobscot. Moreover, I also feel that the town council has taken a crucial steps to address the whitewashing and the recent changes to town signs by reaching out and apologizing to local Native leaders on the topic. And although the issues of how we choose our collective symbols and identity are complex, the principles underlying are not. They are respect, transparency, inclusion, and the desire to do well by all. By this metric, the town council is setting a good and humble example for us all.
Thank you.
Jeff, there are now 2 hands raised online.
Oh, good, thank you. I cannot see those, so if we could. Pete, can we get those folks? Malcolm, please go ahead.
Hi there, this is Malcolm Himshoot. I am currently one of the members of Orono's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. So I know I've seen the recommendation, the document containing like 6 process recommendations, but I wondered if somebody could kind of read those 6 aloud tonight in terms of the actions that Darren Runco was just kind of asking for, in the context of the discussion later about letters of apology. Those actions for process improvement might be helpful.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. So maybe when we finish our public comment session, we'll kick off our council deliberation with those recommendations. Right. Jose, you have your hand raised?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go right ahead.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person today, but I wanted to ask, just for clarity, is what you're voting on today or discussing today is whether or not to offer an apology at all, or which form of apology to proceed with?
I think both of those items. I think what we are not talking about today is the form that some potential signage could take, or the process of,
Sure.
you know, schedule meetings and things like that. We're really looking at basic questions. Is an apology appropriate? And if so, which form does the council go forward with?
Yeah. So I'm online and I'm looking at Council Order 21-104 that was adopted on June 14, 2021. It says a resolution acknowledging the historic and contemporary Indigenous presence in Orono. Is that one? 2 questions. One, is that something that everybody on the panel today is aware of? And 2, is that resolution still active?
Yes, to both of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so just to read from the last portion of that, to respect the wishes and prerogatives of the Penobscot Nation and the Wabanaki tribal nations in the manner that Orono represents symbols, images, and messages relating to the Penobscot Nation, Chief Orono, and the shared history of the town and Penobscot Nation and Wabanaki tribal nations. So I just want to say that, offering an apology, whether it's in the form of these letters, probably in the most formal way possible, because you are dealing with an independent government. So, offering that apology is definitely in line with the resolution that has been adopted by the town council. So I say that it's not only a good idea, but also imperative in terms of, continuing to have good relations from one government to another. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, thank you very much. Thanks. All right. Lori.
Hi, I'm Lori Osher. I was served on the town council and now I serve as the representative to Orono in the state legislature. And I want to thank the town council for bringing this issue onto your agenda, because it was important to me that we passed that resolution, that ordinance, and also that we invited members of the Penobscot Nation to come and talk with us to start the dialogue about how we might make signage that was honoring not the history of this community and this location and our association or neighborliness with the Penobscot Nation. And that reasons by Darren, like some of the discussion was, oh, well, we had this contract. That didn't happen, and I think I'm just so grateful that you're revisiting it, because I'm in government now, a different form of government, but it's the work of government is to figure out what we've done that has missed the mark and to try to do better. So I really appreciate that you're revisiting this. I know it's taking time and there's many other things that you need to address, but this is essential, and I'm so grateful and I'm so glad to be here doing it.
Thank you. Margot.
Yeah, I'm Margot Lukens. And I also want to thank the council for giving us all the opportunity to contemplate an exercise in humility. Because that's something that descendants of settlers or, you know, people in the dominant culture rarely do in a serious way. And we have some very specific things to apologize for, and one is that process that started out in an encouraging way, but then as many processes do, just did not continue in a collaborative way. And so I think that's a reason that what Darren spoke about, the sort of a delineation of actions to be taken, is very important. And the other thing is that it's not just that Penobscot people were grumpy that they aren't on the sign. It's more than that. It's that in our attempt to get new signs, because the old ones were falling down, that instead of making prominent the image of Chief Joseph Orono, who, by the way, is an interesting choice for the town of Orono, because he was descended, it is said, not only from Penobscot ancestors, but also from French ancestor, Baron de Saint Castin. So he's a bridge-making figure to begin with. So the signs that we have at the moment inadvertently probably do exactly the thing that we were trying to avoid, which is to sort of erase and make it invisible the fact of Indigenous presence here in this part of our world. And so I think acknowledging that one of the failures of our process was to lead us again into that mistake and into that action of erasure, which it's a compounding of many, many gestures and generations of genocidal actions. It may, to a marketing person, may not really feel like a big deal, but it's a big deal. And so I participated in the process of creating the longer letter. I acknowledge that. And I also read Leo Kenny's shorter letter, which I thought was excellent. And at the same time, I want to say that the part of acknowledging why this apology is necessary, the missingness of the person or the cultural reference that really needs to be central, I think needs to be in the letter somehow. I'm usually really in favor of something being shorter, but I think there's an important detail there. So I want to thank everyone for taking this so seriously and for wordsmithing and collaborating and doing all the background talking that's brought us here.
we have any other comment? Okay, we'll have an opportunity for public comment at the end of our agenda as well. So let's move on, and I'm going to take Malcolm's suggestion to heart and just very quickly review these are in our online materials as well. Review the recommendations from the DEIB committee with the understanding that the DEIB committee is an advisory committee of council. And so the town council adopts or accepts the recommendations as individual councilors see fit. We don't vote on these or accept these in a formal way, but we have empowered the DEIB committee to offer us advice when these issues come up. So these recommendations are that we revisit town council's resolution acknowledging the historic and contemporary Indigenous presence in Orono, which was also mentioned by one of our public commenters. Consult with the Penobscot Nation Council formally as opposed to informally. Prepare to involve cultural consultants in looking at actual images, not only at high level concepts. Ensure that Penobscot consultants and artists are paid for their time. Hold broader and more inclusive community meetings and discussions for any significant changes to town branding, signage, vision, etc. When visual designs and themes for town branding are generated and considered, double check with cultural consultants in a review process and send out proactive updates to the Orono community at large and to neighboring communities at each step of the process so that people know how to get involved and they know about big changes when they or are expected to happen. So those were the recommendations from the DEIB committee to town council related to this particular issue. So do we have any question about that? And if we do, we can ask our DEIB committee liaison maybe to answer this.
I want to say there actually are two more recommendations on that page. The format doesn't make it clear.
Yeah.
Because of what's in that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
But there is also recommendation 7 is to report back to the Penobscot Nation Council on all action items promised and undertaken related to numbers 2 through 6. And also that the DIB committee further recommends the town of Orono work with Wabanaki Reach or another entity promoting cultural competency and professional development for those living and working in Wabanaki territory.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those. It's on the back of my page and I didn't.
All good.
All right. So that said, with that as our context, let's as a council then discuss whether we feel an apology is necessary, and if so, what is the appropriate vehicle for sharing that apology?
And I would say that I think it's for all the reasons that have been listed already. I think an apology is warranted and necessary. I mean, especially given the feedback from one of the consultants in question. I think that makes it especially clear. I think Margaret's point about sort of the erasure being barely a metaphor here is a good one. And I am also in favor of the longer form of the letter, although I really appreciate the time and thought that Leo put into the shorter version. I think it was clear that real time was spent thinking about this. I think the reason that I'm inclined towards the first letter is mostly because it does list in detail specific action items to be taken as a result. I think an apology ought to come with commitments of some sort. And there's mention of it in the shorter letter. I mean, mentioning the money that we have set aside that we can further vote on. But I think I feel most comfortable at this point, making sure that, I mean, whatever letter, but we can draft either one. We might still want to go with some version of the shorter letter, but if we do, I would like to add back in some more language regarding commitments and action items that we are willing to take up.
Is it possible to put the picture that was sent out?
Yeah.
Just to reference, Sarah mentioned the Stillwater Ave sign, because
Community
I haven't seen that either.
Yeah, we had a community member share with us an image of the Stillwater Avenue sign, and I think we have a file for that we can also display.
Share that. I do want to reiterate that this sign is the most visible of all of them. A lot of them are far less.
Yeah.
This is the only one that was redone. So this is the only one that shows at that level.
And I do think, I mean, this is what we're talking about. I fully believe that the council that did this, the staff that did this, looked at that image and thought that's what we're getting. And to me, that is a very different, after we were told that it was on there on this Kelly Road side, I literally pulled over to see and like, oh, yeah, yes, it is.
You have to get right up next to it,
Yeah,
look at it from
yeah.
the side.
I had to
So-
get out of my car at the Kelly Road to see it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
This one I can
So-
see.
So I mean, I think this is really this was, I have no doubt the intent and I do, we've consulted people from the Penobscot Nation, obviously Darren was here and others. And I guess I'm hearing now from Darren that sort of is officially consulting, but that seems like a gray area. I don't know. But I think hopefully we can all agree that the intent was there, to consult with the nation, to do right by the nation. And I just feel like that when the original letter, talking about the erasure of Native history, it's a tactic of genocide, and you have to connect our process to that, then I think you have to connect our staff and our council to that. And I'm not comfortable with that. That's, Sarah, I understand you don't feel that way. I do. I feel like this really throws staff and previous council under the bus. And that was my reason for taking that out, Margot, just to be clear. I'm not comfortable with it at all. The other thing, let's keep in mind, hindsight, obviously, it's 2020. We don't know every individual conversation that took place. There were consultants. Certainly one of our council members is married to one of the consultants. So there were probably conversations that aren't documented that we don't know about. Again, just going back to intent, there's no question based on everybody on at that table, their intent was really good. Just to back up, I'm absolutely support apology letter. I don't support the longer one because of that statement in there. I'm not opposed to the action items being added or some form of it, but I feel like that really is a direct hit or really throwing our people under the bus. And I'm just not I'm not comfortable with that.
I can appreciate that. I think, I have a couple thoughts, response. I guess one is, I totally agree. Intent, I think, was good. But of course, morality and doing the right thing are so much more than intent. It's about consequences, about the results. And there's lots of phrases about good intentions and where they lead sometimes. But I think also it's important. Part of the reason that this is a serious issue worthy of an apology is because of that history that we're connecting to. And that's why I think it's fairly important to make that connection explicitly. It's not saying that our staff are engaging in genocide or that our previous council engaged in genocide, but it's part of a larger history that is really terrible, violent, and this, and on some level, it's just a sign. It's not just a sign. And I think our connection and ongoing relationship, in whatever form that takes with the Penobscot Nation, needs to acknowledge the ongoing power imbalance between Native peoples and non-Native peoples, between settler people. The Wabanaki here in Maine will continue to be at a disadvantage in many different ways. I hear what you're saying, and I know that it is a very serious statement, and I think, but it's serious because we're apologizing for something that I think is serious, and it's worth calling out.
But when you say that it cannot be this process cannot be separated from that. I think you're indicting.
I think it's just continuous.
Previous, but.
Leo, I was wondering, is there a way to rewrite that would work? I mean, because it was not my intention to ever say that was, I fully 100% agree with you that everyone's intentions were great through this process and it went wrong anyway. And I've said, I think that's because of process issues, not people issues ever. And I mean on council, not on staff. As far as I can tell, staff was stellar through every aspect of this at all points. I didn't see any problem in staff process ever. I don't know, I'm not there. I mean, staff are staff and they look at their own process. So I'm only looking at council process. But is there a way to change this to acknowledge, because what I meant to say was that this larger cultural context exists and that the pain that was tapped into by the change comes from that context and from us unwittingly doing something that, you know, we reenacted. Not that we ever meant to, but that it did reenact that erasure, whether we meant to or not, and that erasure connects to a bigger context of erasure. I certainly never meant to say that it was, you know, anything intentional in any way. So if there's a way we can figure to rewrite that, I don't know, but I would be open on that. I just think it's important to acknowledge, as Rob has said, it's a big context. And, you know, there's a lot of history of that. And it was painful to people in a different way, I believe, because of that.
I
Sonia's
wanna,
got a-
yeah, I
I
want to
think.
jump in real quick to I guess say two things. One is my sentiments mostly echo Rob's, and second, I wanted to note that Darren Ranko has a hand up and wondered if now might be an appropriate opportunity to let him speak.
Thank you. Thanks, Sonia. I cannot see the online comments, so I appreciate that. Darren, can you go ahead?
Thank you guys, and thanks for recognizing me again. Yeah, I feel I hear mostly consensus. What I'll say is this: we made a pitch to have a greater integrated set of sign, like a whole series of things. The next step that happened was this change, and I agree the Stillwater sign is better, but even better would have been just keeping the sign as is. And also, no one was consulted, as far as I know, that like we made this pitch, we gave some history to the council, and I think the idea that what we shared in August of 2020, it doesn't feel like that had any influence, and it felt like the town went in the opposite direction. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so it doesn't feel like, I mean, you'd get the same reaction if each of the signs also looked like Stillwater. You'd get the same reaction from, you know, the people on, you know, Penobscot Nation Facebook or what, you know, you'd get the same reaction, because our pitch was to be like, let's integrate more, let's more focus on this shared history, let's more focus on like a deeper and broader sense. And then the next step was to decenter and take away some of that. I guess that's where I'm having a hard time like trusting a process that doesn't recognize that very fact. You know, like what did we say to you in that meeting that made you want to, you know, almost erase the whole thing, or not consult with us, or even pitch us this sign before you put it up, or any of that, I guess, is my question. Like, and so I guess, you know, again, I don't want to put anyone under the bus, and you know, I'm about fixing things and doing the work that needs to be done to create really interesting and really you know, integrative and encapsulating kinds of signage for everyone to be proud of in the town of Orono and Penobscot Nation. But yeah, it's just, I guess it's hard for me to figure like exactly what happened and why without a little bit of like, you know, if we're gonna actually work together, if this is the most recent act, like I haven't heard anyone explain it exactly. Like, I'm guessing when I say I think you guys had a consultant, that's just like something I heard gossip town, you know, whatever. You know, I don't know. I have no idea why you did what you did, but it was definitely against the spirit of cooperation that I left that August 2020 meeting with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Darren. And having heard Darren, I think I have just a little bit more to say, and then I'll pass it to someone who hasn't spoken yet. But Yeah, I don't think that being like sensitive about feeling bad for making a mistake voting yes on that sign. If I did that, I think I probably did, but I don't even remember. Is useful. I think what's useful is looking at what is it that we want to do in town and how do we build relationships that get us there. And so feeling really strongly based on what on the sort of the homework that I've done through this process, as well as, you know, Darren's really compelling pitch tonight and other folks who've spoken. Yeah, I think the longer form of an apology letter feels to me like, let's go forward and do that, and let's not belabor too much the act of issuing an apology, which, like, you know, issuing an apology is an everyday act of rebuilding relationships and goodwill and humility that I think helps build trust and helps move forward. And that's the point of it. The point isn't to you know, be self-flagellating or to be looking a particular way. The point is to say, hey, I think that I have some opportunity to do better. I recognize that there has been hurt. I'm sorry that I hurt you. Can we please, if you would like to, move on and do beautiful things together? So that's how I'm feeling. And I will pass to someone else.
Great, thank you, Sonia. Dan?
I think Sonia just ended with the very, very short version of the letter, which I would vote for right now. So thank you for that. For me, I definitely think an apology is in order. And I want to thank Sarah, Sonia, other members of the council who've come together. I think we've all kind of pitched in on this a little bit, but particularly all the work that community members have done to show us the steps. You know, Representative Osher communicated with me and gave me some perspective about the process that was very helpful in kind of my decision making. So I'm definitely in support of an apology. I think for us, it's an opportunity this is an opportunity for us to flesh out and help and experience our service promise of Your Voice Matters and what we want to do to make this a council that is really strives to hear from people, really strives to be responsive to people, and have a process that allows people to follow along. Process is hard. It's hard to get things moving. And then when it gets moving, it's hard to stop it, you know, in terms of and we need to think, I think, as we look for a new town manager and all that work, we need to think about how we improve our process so that there's more accountability in it. And hats off to the DEIB committee for their work on this and their commitment to accountability and reviewing this and made a check on how we do things. I think that's going to be really important, and I appreciate their recommendations. And would like to see us somehow speak to that with whatever we do tonight. Drafting a letter together is hard. You know, I mean, we all have different points of view on it, and we should probably be doing this. And we can't meet. I bring this up from time to time. We can't meet as a group, as a small groups. We have to meet in big meetings like this or one-on-one. So it's very difficult for us to work through wordsmith things like that. And my preference as a communicator is to, short, brief statements and that we back up with policies and actions. Like the fact that we set aside and we voted to set aside $50,000 for the work that needs to be done is a statement. It's something that it's tangible. So it's going to be hard to. I'm going to defer to other people in terms of the language. This is not the letter I would have written. There are a lot of elements in this letter that I absolutely support. I understand Leo's concerns about. I think the intent was there to do the right thing, but the process was not great. And I think it's just it sends a signal to us that we have to be very careful about the things that we work on and how we bake in process that allows people to follow along and contribute and hold ourselves accountable. So that's a long way of saying I'm definitely supportive of the apology. And the words, the precise words are, I understand the context piece. I'd like to think we could get to an agreement about what that sounds like, because I think we all agree that the context is there around, oppression and years, centuries of discrimination. But I hope we can get to that point with this letter, but I'm not sure So that's what I wanted to say.
I guess, can I go and just offer, Sarah asked me a direct question. I would change out cannot be separated to could be seen in this. Could be seen.
We're looking at the long version, is that?
On the long version,
Okay.
where it says, we know that the erasure of native history, culture, and language by colonizer peoples remain over the last several hundred years has been an intentional tactic of genocide, and the minimization of Chief Orono on our signs cannot be separated from this larger cultural context. I would prefer to see in there, could be seen in this larger cultural context. I think it is, I think it should be separated. I don't think it is the same, and I don't think that is what was done. So that's my that would be my edit to agree to be in favor of the larger letter.
I think I'm fine with that change because including this paragraph in the first place still helps us place it in that context. And I don't really care that much about the specificity of these particular words, cannot be separated, can be seen in this context. I think that that's a fairly minimal change, and if it helps you get behind this paragraph, I mean, at least I'm okay with it.
I also feel fine about that. I'm curious what Matt is thinking and wanted to note that Jose has a hand up again online.
Great. I'm going to ask Jose to speak, and then I'm going to invite Councilor Powers to speak because we have not heard from him. But Jose, go ahead.
Thank you for calling me again. Hey, it sounds like you guys are getting to a place of consensus, and I think that's good. I think I just want to kind of emphasize the fact that the intent, I heard a little bit about intent, and I heard a little bit about accountability. And I want to say that if through the letter, well, through this letter, you have an opportunity to reset what intent was, what the intent was, you know, with this entire project to begin with. I also want to say that if the letter comes across as though you're apologizing for the process, or you're apologizing for the company that messed up the sign, that's going to create other issues. I think it's okay to acknowledge the fact that our neighbors, people of indigenous, background, have endured what they have endured, and the history is what the history is. You can say that within that letter and say, we acknowledge that this is the history of the people. You know what I mean? And we understand how something like this can be in that regard, right? So it's okay to acknowledge that, and then also move forward with what the action is going to be, just to wrap it up. So it sounds like everything is kind of coming together, where it should be. I just want to emphasize that piece, that when you get to the final draft, just please make sure that it doesn't sound like what you're doing is scapegoating the process or the people that made the sign, but rather, the fact that there was an element of hurt, through this process, that is in line with what these indigenous people have endured throughout history. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I was like, just follow me for just 1 second. I was driving up Main Street, and I was stopped at the light in a big long line of cars. And right in front of the taqueria. So the cars all started to go, and I noticed that I had space in front of me. And so I started to go, and then I glanced down at my phone. All the cars stopped, and I slammed into the person in front of me, right? Okay, so I slammed into them and I dented their bumper. Now, we pulled over off on Bennett Street, all right? And I had made a mistake. So it was not my intent. I did not want to rear end this person. I had no intention. It was a real pain for me to do this. It was right for me to get out, go over to her and say, I'm sorry, I rear ended you. I was distracted. I apologize. My next action plan at that point, if I had just said, sorry, and then jumped in my car and drove away, this poor old lady would have been left alone. I had to have an action plan, and the next action plan for me is to get out my insurance card and say, here, take a picture of my insurance card. I'm gonna take a picture of your insurance card. Let's take pictures of our license plate so that we can make this right for you, right? And so I am more like leaning towards the longer version because it has action plan. It has, and it also has some of the history behind it. I don't mind the shorter one at all. It's a really great, piece of writing, just so long as we are clear in where we're going and that we have a clear history of where we got to where we are. And I believe that the first one has some of that history about talking to to consultants and what happened, and it has some of the history to where we got to where we are. So me personally, I think that would be fine. I like brevity myself, but in this case, I think it's better to just move forward with the longer letter. I like it. I think it has cultural context, and I also would be fine with changing that language. But I would like to have an action plan to make it better at the same time, or some sort of commitment to move forward. That's just as like I have to give somebody an insurance card, I want to move that and make it right for as best as I can. Make it right. So that's how I feel.
Okay, so any other comments? I usually wait till the end because, yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
I haven't spoken, but I've just mostly been listening and really appreciating what everyone has said. I think for the same reasons, I also really appreciated Leo's letter and thought it read really well. I was like, wow, it reads really well, shorter. But I then went back and thought, I really care about these things that were taken out that are very specifically saying we are committing and proposing to do this behavior differently going forward, and what ways we were going to do it differently. To me, that part really matters. And I'm grateful to Leo for working on the language so we can keep in the reference to the larger context. Just because as I've heard repeatedly from Penobscot folks I've spoken to, it's that larger context that made it very painful for the folks who weren't the consultants. For the consultants, there was other parts of the process that I think were also very hard when they felt like they were asked and then something went awry. But for a lot of folks, it's simply it just felt like a metaphor for, erasure over time. And we didn't intend that metaphor, but it really felt like that. I had one mom write me, who is a mother of a Penobscot person, not Penobscot herself, and just say, there's bicycles on his face. Like, that feels like so painful to me and to my daughter. And I know we didn't intend that, right? So I want to acknowledge that pain exists and is real and comes from a larger context. So I appreciate that. And I really mostly appreciate that the longer letter has actions and commitments about how we intend to behave going forward, we can hold ourselves to. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
So did you say whether you're good with the edit that I've given or not?
It said what, Leo, again? It said the minimization of chief burner
It
signs.
says where it cannot
Could
be
be seen.
cannot be separated
Right.
to could be seen in this, could be
Right,
seen.
this is- can be seen in this larger culture, or could be seen in this larger cultural context. Yeah, I think it's okay. I mean, I wrote one myself. It's slightly different as you were writing yours, but I think yours is okay. Mine said, however unintentional, might have reenacted this larger, or may have reenacted this larger cultural context. It's very similar, right? So just acknowledging it's unintentional, but it may have reenacted this, and that matters. Yeah. You're okay with that one too? Great.
I'd like to thank everybody that was involved in this discussion. It's super hard to edit in public, right? And the fact that we had two really thoughtfully crafted letters helped our process along. I am a strong believer that brevity is beauty, and I was prepared to come in here to advocate really strongly for a shorter version of the letter, maybe with the modification that Rob first suggested, but I'm really glad we've sort of come to consensus on the longer version, because I do think it is important that we acknowledge that this is not just a signage issue, but it's an issue that involves a whole lot of other context for a lot of members of our community, both Indigenous members of our community and non-Indigenous members of our community who believe strongly that we need to do the right thing as we go forward. I also am very appreciative that both versions of this letter respect that our town staff was acting at the behest of town council, and that our town staff could bear none of the blame and none of the responsibility for this process going awry. So that's really important to me, that messaging is clear in here. So with that said, I think, and with the edit that Leo has suggested and that people have agreed to, I think I would support this long form as well, so. So I don't want to cut off our discussion, however. So if there is more discussion on this before we wrap up our discussion and call for a vote on this item, I'd like to invite that now.
Yeah, sorry. So we gotta decide which these two edits, as minor as they are, I mean, as similar as they are, which one we're gonna take. And so I think.
Want to hear them again?
Can two of you decide, or I'm fine with either one, but we have to pick one.
I think I actually like Leo's wording better personally, but I'm fine with either.
I'm of the same mind.
I'm great with Leo's
Yeah.
writing.
Hey, Leo.
I'm telling you, I was scrawling at the same time.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
And I thank Leo for offering it.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, in our order, so we're gonna vote on an order. And are we gonna amend this so that it includes the letter and the recommendations of the DEIB committee? In terms of how do you want to handle that, Chair Wingard?
The recommendations of the DEIB committee just exist as the recommendations of the
Okay.
DEIB. We don't need to vote to accept those in any way, right? We've already.
We could vote to say we're planning to follow them.
I'm not
But that would be,
prepared.
that would
I don't
be
think we want to.
another discussion.
Okay, that's another discussion for another day. So we're doing the letter now.
Yeah,
The
so,
letter still contains several commitments that I think are in line.
yeah.
And
Most of the same commitments are in the letter.
So my third and probably final process question is, will we have things that we'll decide tonight in terms of what we'll do next after we're gonna apologize like Matt did when he.
Yep.
Come on, Matt. I mean.
And my son was in the
Thank
car.
you for sharing so much.
And
It was like a
car.
total dad failure in
Sad
every way possible.
So,
Can I-
but are we gonna have, like, what are we gonna do next? Like, what's gonna be on our agenda next? When will we see something next out of this so that we hold ourselves accountable to an action, do you know what I mean?
I have a slight response to that. Can I put
Yeah.
that out? I know Leo was smart about catching that my introductory email on the longer letter kind of read weird. But I did want to bring forth that, what was recommended that we would do was to email this out to everyone listed here, the 4 consultants, the Penobscot Nation Council in full, and Chief Francis. And I think, a small little email at the top saying, please find attached our apology letter. And if appropriate, we would also be grateful to present this letter in person to Nation Council with taking out this other thing you thought was confusing, is what I would hope we would do. And we would send it out and it would go out and we would be awaiting a response from the nation of whether they want us to present it in person or how they choose to respond to us. But that's what I would like to do. So I'm just gonna put that out.
Yeah, I think that seems fine. And again, it was really just that the thing was really screwy to
It
read.
was badly written, sorry. So Leo, what I would do is I would just take out the second paragraph and it would read, I guess it would say, Dear Penobscot Nation Council and Chief Kirk Francis, below please find an apology letter from the Orono Town Council. If appropriate, we would be grateful for a chance to present this letter in person to the Penobscot Nation Council as well, period. Sincerely, the Orono Town Council. But it would be on the email addressed also to the 4 consultants who have already read it once before and they would be CC'd on it.
Yep.
Is that
I think that
fine?
works. I think that's the.
Does everyone
Guys,
feel
I'm good.
okay with that?
Yep.
You envision all of us going if that was something they were acceptable to?
That would be great if Cornell can notice it somehow and that's allowed. I know we need to notice that sort of thing, or we could send, I think what's important to respond within the timeline we indicate that we will do that within a month of invitation. So if all of us could schedule that, great.
Well, yeah, I think what
We could figure that out when we got there.
what we've done in the past when things like this have come up, when it's either a council presenting material to the county or to committee of the legislature or something like that, is that we notice it for any and all counselors who can attend.
Yeah.
But we don't stop the meeting because there are certain,
Yeah.
even if we can't have a quorum, we
Right.
will go at their behest.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Does that seem like could be part of the vote, that that's what we'll do then?
Yes, that's normally, that's our standard.
Yeah, no, I mean this intro.
Yes, please.
If we're voting on
Yeah,
the
I
letter, we
agree.
could put that intro in with the second paragraph taken
Yeah.
out and the 4 consultants CC'd.
Yes.
So at the 6:15 mark of this meeting, we articulated what the next step will be as a result after we vote on this today.
Are you doing minutes?
I literally go through these meetings and, you know, on YouTube, and you've gotten those emails from me.
I just want to also point out that
Oh, you have.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm trying to help.
Go ahead, sir.
I just also want to point out, if folks have the ability to look at the second page of the letter, I don't know if we're looking at the markup version or the regular version, but there's a paragraph, I guess maybe the second or third down that says, the Orono Town Council welcomes recommendations from and conversations with. Do you all see that paragraph?
Yep.
And at the end of that paragraph, it says, that we took a vote to this effect on this date. So I would assume that in taking this vote today, we are endorsing that we are open to these conversations and we want to state clearly that we're willing to consider and entertain all options, gateway signage back to its original format, redesigning it again, or any other solution. So we could list today's date and the vote we take here in this letter.
Yeah, I think that's inclusive of approving
I
this.
just want to be sure that we can put that in there. That's the only other thing I saw. Thanks.
Any other comments?
I would just say I'm grateful for the way that Sonia framed what an apology is. I think that's helpful for us. It keeps it from us just being, well, like self-flagellating, I think is how Sonia described it. This is about, and also how Matt had such a great example, personal level. I mean, no, I'm serious. I mean, it's funny, but just that it is about these commitments that we're making. And also that it's about, like, hopefully, really interesting, productive relationship going forward. That Darren mentioned that you could send us the information about signage at the university. I love the idea of being able to do so much more cultural and historical work here involving the Penobscot Nation in town. There's just so much that we could do, and I'm hopeful that, I mean, whatever the Penobscot Nation would like to do to work with us, you know, obviously that's the factor, but I'm excited to do anything there pending that. I'm very excited about what this can potentially yield.
Great, thank you. Sonia, you had your hand up.
Yes, I had one tiny question, and so I understand that we're sending an email. I'm curious who's sending the email. Is Sarah deputized to do that? Should that come from you, Council Chair Wingard? I just want to make sure there's a plan for who sends that and soon.
That comes from our town manager.
From the town manager. Perfect. Great. We've got a plan for it.
Cornell, I have most of these emails, but the Penobscot Nation Council emails are on their website, so we can gather those from there.
Okay, this seems just a little odd that we're offering an apology that should be in person. We're gonna send them an email first. It says, here's a letter of apology. Should we prepare a letter
This is,
with all your signatures?
yeah,
Contact them and say, we'd like to apologize for the town logo issue.
Yeah, maybe.
Is it possible for us to meet with you to present you with this letter?
I don't think it matters if it's in, I think a formal letter is fine. It could have this, it doesn't need to be an email. I just meant it needs an intro saying, here's our apology. And if it's appropriate, we'd like to come in person to offer it. It might not be appropriate, in which case at least we've offered it in written format. But it was suggested to me by one of the other consultants of the 4 that that would be the appropriate way to proceed, to write it and then to send it, and to also say, if you think it would be appropriate for us to come in person, we would be happy to do that, but that we should also send it. So I'm just sort of following the cultural advice I was given.
Have you sign it and we'll
Yeah.
attach that to
Yeah.
your.
Or to, it doesn't have to be an email, it could be another mailed packet.
I do think,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
a written,
Yeah.
I think
I think
sending
that's
a
better.
letter,
Thank you. I think that makes sense.
US Postal is probably.
Right, okay, so it will just have an intro that's on a little page and the longer apology letter comes behind, signed by all of us.
Yes.
Correct? Sounds lovely.
Wait, but
So he's not sending
I
it
don't
out
know that-
for us. We're sending a real letter,
Yes.
signed by us,
Sign.
Yeah.
and it does say
All
that.
right.
That sounds great.
Sign it.
The one thing I would say is I don't know that I have land addresses for the 4 consultants. We may only have emails. You might have to follow up on that.
We.
Yeah.
All right,
And we have a date by which we're hoping to get this out is the last thing I'd like to ask, just because the dates, there's some dates in the letter that might need to be adjusted depending on how fast we think this is gonna go out.
So I think I would defer to Cornell about when he feels he could have a letter like this printed up, and then we would have to come in and sign. We don't have to sign it at a meeting because it's already approved. We would just have to commit to a date that we sign it by.
How about just our first January meeting, the letter's here and we sign it and send it. Is that reasonable or is there some other deadline I'm trying to be?
That's fine with me.
It says at the end right now that we can make ourselves available to meet before the end of January 2024, if that is convenient for the nation, or within 30 days of any invitation arriving after January 1st. We might want to reword this if we're not even sending it till after January 1st. That's up to you all.
I mean, I think it could be broader than that. Just say, you know, we can make an arrangement to meet. I don't know. The second part of that thing is, if it's just that second, give us 30 days.
I think, yeah,
So
I think
take
I
off the
agree
first
with you.
Selves available to meet within 30 days of any invitation arriving from the nation?
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
I'm making a note. We can make ourselves available to meet if that is convenient for the nation
Sausage getting made here.
within 30 days of any invitation arriving from, within 30 days of any invitation, period. Within 30 days of any invitation, period. Lovely. Everyone feel good about that?
Yes.
Does that work for you?
Okay.
And our
Yeah,
council.
we'll get working on it. If we can get it in shape before they contact you to just stop by and stuff.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you for now. Yeah.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, I would call for a vote on order 23-249 as discussed and amended.
Does it have to say which letter? Because the order just says apology.
We've already conveyed.
Okay.
We don't have to add, we don't have to amend our order to say that. We just, as long as everybody's, and we have the video, we know we're here.
Excellent.
Timestamps,
I'm good.
That's right.
6:21.
So we need
6:21 says.
a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Berthasell,
In favor.
Counselor Demerit,
In favor, thank you.
Counselor Kenny,
In favor.
Council Chair Wingard,
In favor.
Counselor Marks,
In favor.
Counselor Powers,
In favor.
Counselor Laraway.
In favor.
And so vote is unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. That was the hardest part of our meeting. Order 23-250, order approving the town council meeting schedule for January through March 2024. We need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, could we have a roll call vote on our meeting schedule for January through March?
Counselor Berthasell,
In favor.
Counselor Demerit,
In favor.
Counselor Kenny,
In favor.
Council Chair Wingard,
In favor.
Counselor Marks,
In favor.
Counselor Powers,
In favor.
Counselor Laraway.
In favor.
That passes unanimously. I'd like to, well, let's do our council chair report very quickly. Sarah brought up at the beginning of our meeting that we have some upcoming dates and some information that might be relevant to the council regarding our town manager search. I'd just like to remind people that the community survey is live on the Orono website. It's on a banner on the front page. So go to orono.org and please complete the community survey if you'd like. And that's going to allow us to begin the process with our consultant. And if there is other material that we should know about, Sarah and Leo are the chairs of our ad hoc search committee. So if there's other stuff we should know about.
There was just the email that went out from Cornell that had the attachments to all the council regarding the contract and also the information we need to begin gathering to help the consultants make our brochure that will advertise our town and our position, which in a very quick look, did everyone look at that? Yeah, okay, so in a very quick look on my part, that looks like that's likely to be something that requires collaboration between staff and council, and I wondered what Cornell had to say about that. I had a thought, but I also wanted to hear.
Yes, so we talked about it today at a staff meeting. Pete and Mitch are gonna get started on filling it in, and then we'll have other staff fill in where they need to. And there are a few pieces on the benefit sections that the council will have to weigh in, but we'll get you a draft of that when it's done, probably in a couple of weeks. In regards to the survey, so far you've had 91 responses. And We will have some printed for those who don't use a computer. We'll have them at the library and elsewhere. Town office. And then people can return them to my office and Amanda will enter them into the survey.
I was wondering also, like, if there's an update about how it's getting out to any ways that council's sharing things or we should be sharing broader. I know it's all over the website. I know that paper sounds great. It's all over social media. I'm assuming also, is there anything you encourage? Yeah.
All the same places that we have put them out, like any of the potluck that we have done. Those have all been the same. The other place, and I don't know whether Pete heard back, but right before this big power outage and storm, we reached out to the school as well, because that's another place that when we do community-wide stuff, we shared that information. So anything that you folks have done outside of that, that would be helpful, you know, but certainly we don't.
Has it been sent out via the agenda updates? I get those and I
That's a good point.
can't remember if I've seen.
I don't know that
come
it has,
on.
but we can look into that, whether we can look into that, because it's
Okay.
not an agenda, but we can see how that, if you
Slide
sign
that
up
in
for
there.
what you get sent, so we can figure out how that might work in on the website, so.
Mitch, do things like this, do they go out to other email groups that the town has, like the library list or the Parks and Rec, or is that all separate and that doesn't
We
happen?
don't typically email stuff out on those because ultimately when people sign up for them, they sign up for that specific thing. And that's why the website works, because people can choose what they want. We can look into those pieces, but they go out on the Facebook pages of all those, which all those users, most of them are all attached to anyways. So.
If that's a policy issue, I feel like we should revisit that because only speaking for myself, but if I was getting the rec emails, I certainly wouldn't be offended. It's not it is a solicitation, but if I'm getting other emails like the agenda, rec, library, I think that's a okay mode for doing something like this. Personally, I don't think there are any marketing things that we would, I mean, if someone says, just take me off your list, then we'll learn, but I feel like over communicating is gonna be better for most people. So if that is a policy thing that's prohibiting us, I think I would like for us to look at a policy.
I think it's just a practice.
Yeah, so the only other issue is that most of these people are on all of these lists, so you're gonna get it. I mean, if we email them out, you might get it 3-4 times if you're on all these.
Which I'm in favor of,
Yeah,
honestly.
speaking for myself, I am more likely to fill out a survey if I get 3 emails about it than 1, so I think.
I'm with Leo on this practice and not a policy. I would just like to say, I think it's important enough and I don't think it's too bothersome to one time say this is coming because it matters and it affects the library and it affects Parks and Rec and it affects all those things, who this next leader who comes in is. So to me, that feels appropriate and I'd like us to do that.
Okay.
I'm not a Facebook person, so
Yeah.
I appreciate things coming on Facebook, but unlike Dan, I'm not there a lot. So teasing you.
And for all town council members who are on Facebook, one really helpful thing we can do is go share the town's posts that have already shared this, and that will help amplify it and help more people see it if they don't already follow the town's updates. So that's good homework for us. One question I had is if this has gone out internally to staff, because their input is certainly really valuable in this survey as well.
It has. Yeah, it has.
I had a question back on the first part of what we were talking about with the information being gathered. Thank you to Mitch and all other staff who are working on that, because that looked extensive. I had no idea how extensive that was going to be. That looks like a lot of work, and I want to say how appreciated that is. I also wanted to ask if that's something where having some kind of a subcommittee so that rather than it just coming to council, that, I mean, Dan and Matt have been really excellent communication people for us and writing for council. And I wonder if there might be a way for a subcommittee with, if they were willing, of Dan and Matt and Cornell and whatever staff to meet and work on it once before it even comes to us so that it's even further along. Because I am aware that, you know, the 22nd is going to come faster than we think after the new year. And the sooner we can get it done, my understanding is the faster our job gets listed. So I guess I'd just like to propose that if that's
Talking
something.
about the brochure.
Yeah, the brochure collection and whether there could be a brochure subcommittee. And if Dan and Matt were willing, I put their names out, but they might not be, but I'd like to just throw this out to
Well,
council.
I think I'd like to hear from staff. Like, I'd like to hear if staff is overwhelmed and they need extra capacity,
Right.
I think they need to come tell us. But I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong,
Well, it's my understanding that we just give them all the information.
Right.
And then they put
Okay.
together the brochure. We just need everything in one spot.
I was sort of under the impression when I talked to Lissa way back when that they wanted information from staff and some kind of voice from council on how that language was gonna look. So that may be my misunderstanding, but in my conversation, I thought it was staff does this work to get the information and council has some discussions, with Lissa about the language. Maybe that doesn't start till Lissa gets there. I'm not sure.
I'd rather not like wordsmith too much. I mean, I think it would be nice if we had a chance to look at it as, before it's posted.
Yeah.
But I would trust they're the experts and the town staff, particularly Mitch's department, given what Mitch does, in terms of promoting Orono, would be I'm happy to help, but I'd be even happier to look at kind of a near finished product and just offer thoughts as opposed to, and hopefully.
And Cornell talked to Lissa more recently than me, right? So it sounds like what you're hearing is staff gives them stuff and then they come back to council and they show us, here's what we think, and then we look at it.
Yes, but before they get it, we would want you to see what we've done.
Right. And I guess that's the stage I was wondering, would it be helpful for Dan and Matt to look at that before it came to full council? Because it is hard sometimes.
I don't
these
think we're
council-
writing anything. I
Okay.
don't think there's any narrative that we're producing for them. I think that could come to a committee meeting.
Yeah.
And we could vet it in a committee meeting and then pass it back to court.
That's the only other question I had. Thank you,
All right.
Jeff.
We lured Cornell to town, so we're kind of, Orono is just it's understood that Orono is pretty awesome and. worked for
Cornell's
him,
pretty
right?
awesome. Mitch is
Yeah.
pretty awesome. I imagine they're pretty good to work with.
You're an over communicator now. You're in 6:36.
Okay, I did promise another opportunity for public comment before we closed our meeting this evening. So if there's any public comment in council chambers or online, we'd love to hear it. Who's in time? Yes.
Thank you very much for taking this on, and I really look forward to working with the Penobscots to having more of their cultural input, so thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Do you have any other public comment online?
No hands raised online.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's close public comment and I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Yeah.
We even have to?
We
Need a roll call.
we have to roll call.
Do we have to?
So you might want to stay.
Meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Can you roll? Yes.
Counselor Berthasell? In favor.
Counselor Demerit,
Yeah, in favor.
Counselor Kenny,
In favor.
Council Chair Wingard,
In favor.
Counselor Marks,
In favor.
In
favor. Counselor Laraway.
Thank you. We're adjourned. Thanks, Ron. Thank you. Share your, thank you for changes with everyone else.
Yeah, I need to do that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.